Content is intended to provide accurate information, however, is not intended as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult a financial, legal, or tax professional for specific information regarding your individual situation. Opinions expressed and provided are for general informational purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security.
Welcome to Game Plan for Retirement, presented by Chris McIntire, Northwest Ohio's retirement planning resource.
And welcome into the program. This is your Game Plan for Retirement with Northwestern Ohio's resource for a common sense approach to planning, helping to break it all down, uncomplicating the financial investment and retirement planning decisions that we all make, which is certainly appreciated because these are complex, ladies and gentlemen, seeming to get more complex each and every day, especially with inflation and taxes and market volatility. It's good to have the perspective of an experienced, qualified professional here on the program and as your resource, Northwestern Ohio. If you've got questions or concerns, you can reach out personally to address those specifically with Chris McIntire, and we always appreciate your perspective here on the program. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Peter. I'm doing well. How about you, buddy?
Doing all right. Keeping it moving, Chris, and trying to keep everything in alignment and between the ditches and getting all of those forms in the mail, the W-2s, the 1099s, all of the tax forms to go and file. But I know that you take a little bit more of a proactive approach when helping your clients formulate that game plan for retirement. Can you talk to us just briefly here to start the program to give us some premise on the difference between tax preparing and tax planning?
Sure. Yeah. Tax preparing is, look, you're in a hurry to get it done by April 15th, and what do I owe? And then maybe, a general tax preparer, you take your info in, they say, here's what you owe the government. And you say, well, God, is there anything I can do differently? They may say, you can put some money into an IRA if you want to, and that's not necessarily tax planning. For us, tax planning versus tax preparation is over the course of the year, if a client has an IRA and non-IRA assets is, if they have assets that have gone down in value in the non-IRA account, is do we sell some of those to lock in a loss that we can use to offset a gain at some point in the future? Because remember, if Whirlpool Corporation stocks falls, I can sell it and buy it again in 31 days. Okay. So, I've got a loss, I rebought the stock. And so now I've got a tax thing I can play later on in the year. Okay. And then we watch what the client's income is going to be. If they're retired, it's certainly a little bit easier. If they're working and they get bonus pay and things like that, those are some variables that we're not real sure about. We have to wait until typically a little later on in the year for most people when we're looking at Roth IRA conversions, because we know what their income has been up until, let's say, October. Okay. And they said, look, I can withstand anything. I don't need to make any big withdrawal until after the new year. So I can tell you what my income is basically going to be. And then we may shoot an email over to the tax preparer and say, hey, what if Mrs. Jones takes out $30,000 out of her IRA and converts it into a Roth IRA? What are the taxable consequences? Are we still in the 12% tax bracket? As an example, that's a very common thing that we want to do, is max out the 12% tax bracket and then put that money into a Roth IRA that doesn't have any required distributions. And even if it did, they're non-taxable. So it's lowering the IRA account value where the government mandates those distributions that now start at 72 years old. Okay. So we get an extra year of tax planning, if you will, from, last year it was 72, now it's 73. I'm sorry, I can't even keep it straight. It was
I think there was some gray area on the government's part too. I think that we've got to pass it to know what's in it, and we've got to actually live through it in order to define what it actually means with several of these changes that have gone into effect, Chris.
Sure. Yeah. And even in 2022, the previous version of the Secure Act said, okay, everybody's got to take, if you inherit an IRA from like your parents or a non-spouse beneficiary, it's got to be emptied within 10 years. You don't have to take any money out of it until the end of the 10th year, but it's got to be a zero balance. And then last year, they modified that to say, you know what? You do have to take a distribution every year, and it's got to be emptied by the end of the 10th year. So it's like, okay, change on the fly. They waived any penalties for that, thankfully. But now going forward, people that inherit those IRAs do have to take a distribution every year and make sure that the account value is at zero at the end of the 10th year, regardless of what your age is. Now, the caveat, the exception to that is typically husbands and wives. They can put IRAs into their own names. They're not forced to drain it over 10 years. But you want to talk about moving the goalpost every year, and even within the year, it makes it a challenge. Sometimes I got to say, hey, hang on a minute here. Let me think about this. What did they do? Go check, the emails. And, we pay an IRA technical consultant to help us when we run into some really weird events, because we're working with a nice client right now. Her mom died, her mother-in-law died, and her husband passed away. So you got 3 different types of IRA accounts that have, I can't throw them all in together. I can put the husbands together with the wives. Mom-in-law's got an IRA that's an inherited one, with a different date of death on it and date of birth. And then mom's got a different IRA, and we have to treat those separately. So those are 3 different accounts that she's going to have to maintain, throughout the course going forward. And that stuff gets confusing when you get to be 75, 80 years old,
Yeah. And day to day, I don't think we think a lot about some of the tax implications of how we place and layer strategically our different dollars and different various accounts, but they all have different tax implications. In fact, each and every move within them may have tax implications. So we're going to talk through some of those on today's program, ladies and gentlemen. But bottom line, you want to pay as little as possible, only your moral, legal, ethical obligation. You don't want to overpay, and where possible, you want to identify the strategies to be more efficient. There's some perception out there that there's secrets only available to the wealthy. The tax code is the same for everyone. We all have opportunities that we need to identify to be as efficient as possible. If that's one of the concerns for you, pick up the phone, give Chris McIntire a call. It's part of the planning process and the written game plan for retirement that he makes available to you for being a listener or viewer of the program at no cost, no obligation. Just give a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. Chris, with that new Secure Act passing, there are some opportunities and some improvements, and now we've got Secure Act 2.0. As you sort of indicated, a lot of people still aren't aware of the full implications of Secure Act 1, the original one back from 2019. And really, with both of these, it's pretty imperative that we review and update our plan to see if any of the changes have affected or impacted the way that we have things set up to achieve our goals. What are some of the main things that people might have overlooked that need to be updated?
Yeah, I would say, the timing of when you take your required minimum distributions, are you allowed to do Roth IRA conversions? Those have to be done over and above required minimum distribution amount. So again, the nice thing about going from 70.5 to 73 is we get a couple more years to look at Roth conversions. And then I would also say, those qualified charitable distributions, people that want to be charitable. We just had a client call up this week. She wasn't sure. She went to church, and the church had been talking about, their ability to pay money from an IRA directly to a charity, which is something we do a ton of later on in the year. That is still 70.5. So you can pay out up to $100,000 out of your IRA directly to a qualified charity, which means a non-for-profit like a church, a school. Your children and grandchildren are not qualified charities, folks. And then, Peter, I think the 529 college funding thing, that's a unique piece that they did as part of the new Secure Act, is if you've got a 529 plan that's more than 15 years old and it's got, let's say it's got $30,000 in it. Okay, let's say 35,000 because that's the maximum. You can convert that into a Roth IRA. So that's a unique piece, but it's got to be 15 years old. So we're, looking at some things where maybe the kids didn't go to college, for example, and those plans are still active. So nice way to do some conversion of those. And that's good tax planning as well.
Well, again, you've got these opportunities, ladies and gentlemen, and some of these law changes have impacted the plans that people already had set up. We need, again, to stay up to date, to stay current with the plans and reflecting of these new laws. So if you've had a plan in place, you've discussed goals, but have not updated that plan, imperative that you do so. Pick up the phone, give Chris McIntire a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. Chris, you've talked about it, that taxes are one of our largest expenses throughout our lifetime, but specifically, we probably feel the pinch even more so in retirement, and what taxes mean in retirement to retirees who at that point in time, we've got a finite amount of money and we've got to make it last an unknown amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And with most people's concern being running out of money, keeping more what you can legally, tax efficiently, is certainly a priority. And then, what are your goals to do with these dollars? It's been a challenge here, when the markets are down 15, 20%, stocks and bonds, people are working with less money right now. And so, do they cut back on some of the charities, and are they, not taking advantage of some of the tax consequences that, that they can, because they're nervous about what the future can hold? Certainly a worthy argument to be made there. But, if you look at history and you look at the course of the stock market, it typically is a long-term trend toward the positive, and we certainly will hit some storms along the way, and every once in a while a crisis like the 2008 financial crisis. And you had mentioned the debt ceiling on previous shows that we had talked about, and that can certainly add some volatility, the inflation piece. So navigating through retirement, you got to chart a pretty good course here. You have to have a plan of action here, and a plan A and a plan B. We do advocate, as Peter, a lot of safe money strategies, and we're utilizing a lot more of that than probably ever before in the last 15 years, because we've got a better interest rate environment where we can at least get some work out of our money between interest-bearing accounts, CDs, bonds, quality dividend-paying stocks. We're getting some work, out of our dollars versus, the speculative growth that fueled, the Amazons and whatnot of the world during COVID.
Yeah, Chris, I used to hear about this financial principle of protect principle and live off the interest. And for really, I think the last maybe decade, two decades, that has been a very difficult premise to achieve. We've had to take risk in order to get any kind of reasonable growth on our money, and that has not always worked out to help us with the first part, protect the principal. But with the interest rates on the rise throughout 2022, I know that you are once again looking at a lot of attractive planning strategies that can help your clients kind of achieve that goal.
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. And, when you put those goals down on paper and you revisit with these clients on as you have your periodic reviews and whatnot, it helps them kind of come back to center, if you will, because right now a lot of people could be way off saying, look, I'm going to sit in cash. I don't want to be any part. I think the world's falling apart, and we can make that argument at any given moment, that the world, it could certainly be turning.
And yet it's always gone on, right?
Yeah.
Life has always continued.
Sure.
And that's why we plan.
Yeah. And that's why we do our planning and whatnot. And, we've gone through wars and things like that. There's certainly a lot of conflict out here. So, helping talk clients and coach them through the emotional part of it is probably as big of a job that an investment advisor truly has. Is, look, where are we here emotionally and mentally right now? And how do we coach them to keep them on track? Because, sitting in cash doesn't do anything for you right now. And yep, I can, we have a lot of different types of fixed instruments that we're utilizing, big time now. And hey, happy to get 4.5% or 4 or 5, for the next 5 years, and we'll revisit this. Okay. But if you need 7, making 4 isn't getting it. And sitting in cash doesn't get it as well either, because you're not reinvesting dividends. That's not necessarily a strategy. Doesn't mean you need some peace of mind money. We have peace of mind money as well too.
Well, again, if you would like to put together your proper mix and allocation, that is part of the game plan for retirement, but not the comprehensive planning that is done for a true plan. You need to look at the risks that you're taking, the fees that you're paying, the taxes that you may be liable for, generating income into the future, even including optimizing Social Security. That alone, a big piece that could mean a swing in several hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of retirement. So if you have maybe had some pieces in place, some different investment accounts, some of the tools, a 401k, an IRA, a brokerage account, but have not brought it all together into that comprehensive plan, now is the time. And Chris McIntire makes this an easy process, no cost, no obligation, to get your written plan, your game plan for retirement put together. Pick up the phone and give him a call. 800-868-1194. That is 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. And Chris, the proactive tax planning approach, that is going to really have a pretty significant transition as we move away from the paycheck and into our retirement years. That is really one of the kind of biggest shocks of retirement, and especially in the first couple years of retirement. Might say take some tweaking and tinkering to get right and figure out, correct?
Yeah. And it always does. A plan is something that's got to have some flexibility, where you're adjusting, what's going on with the economic conditions, no question about it, the tax environment, the legislative environment. There are a lot of different risks here. And, Peter, you and I both know a couple of buddies of ours that, had some significant health issues well ahead of what, the time frame you would think these things would typically happen. And, before the age of 50, before the age of 60, essentially. So, really upsetting the apple cart. And, thankfully, our one friend who we lost, had planned for something in case of that. And, a huge life insurance policy that, gave his spouse, financial security going forward. And she's 60 years old. So, thankfully, we can plan and mitigate these different types of risk with lots of different types of financial accounts and products that are out there, from Wall Street, the stocks and bond side of the world, the banking instruments, the insurance aspect for annuities, so we don't run out of money, life insurance in case we die too early, some sort of long-term care protection plan in case we're, got to write a check for, $8,000 a month for someone to care for a loved one with a cognitive issue. There are many different things that are going to come up in, I'm 57 years old right now, and I look at my parents in their mid 80s and the health issues that they're having. We've got Robin's dad at 94, the health issues that they have and the costs and whatnot associated with them. So, if everything's rosy at 65, that's fantastic. Take some time and enjoy it, because it does turn at some point, as we know.
Yeah. I mean, this is just the realities of life, Chris, right? Is that sometimes we have difficulties and challenges, and Murphy's Law comes into account. And I know that that's part of your planning process, and not to be a Debbie Downer on anybody's situation, but to talk about these realities. And if all that is focused on is rate of return and how, we're shooting for 8 or 10%, and believe that everything will work out in the end, that's not truly planning. These issues that you're talking about here, the what if this happens, what if that happens, during the conversations in the planning process, I think are paramount to confidence in living life moving forward.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And we have to plan, for when and if happens. Okay.
Yep.
So, if you go into a long-term care facility, we had planned for that long ahead of that. And, I think that's probably going to be one of our big focuses for our clients here this year is, there's so many new improved avenues to help leverage that long-term care cost. Because obviously we've been in practice for a long time. We got a segment of our clients that, were 60 when they retired and they're 80 now. So, the things that they are looking at then when they were retired, when they were 60, it wasn't about how much money they're going to give their grandkids. It was how long, how do we structure our lifetime income? And now that they're age 80 and maybe they've done a lot of their traveling, it's, okay, how do I give money to my kids without without giving up my need if I need it for nursing home or something along those lines. Lots of different things. So estate planning may be more important to them than income planning, just as important to them as income planning was at age 60, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the dynamics of planning are just that dynamic. They change over time. Our own life situation changes. The world around us changes. In our 20s, 30s, and 40s, maybe the chief and primary focus is growth with our investments. And then maybe in our 60s, it transitions to creating income and giving us a livable wage. And then maybe decades later, Chris, it changes to creating that impactful legacy. The plan must be updated along the way. And that is, I think, a big part of the service that you provide there at McIntire Retirement is that you continue to help people update and complete their plans, not just a couple pieces or a couple tools here and there, but really bringing those pieces of the puzzle together to form an accurate picture of where we are and then helping to be the GPS and course correcting moving forward into the future. And ladies and gentlemen, if that is what you are looking for as far as a conversation and a relationship with an advisor, pick up the phone, give Chris McIntire a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. 800-868-1194. Chris, as we are perhaps setting up our financial picture to be more in the legacy mode and passing assets, there are some certain specific types of assets that are better to be left behind than others, correct? I mean, for instance, I know the Secure Act pretty much reinforced that retirement accounts are fantastic for retirement, but maybe not the best generational wealth transfer tools.
Yeah, and that, with the legislative risk, a signature on a piece of paper changed, how we look at IRA accounts now. We can't take them out over 20 years, right? They have to be paid out within a 10-year time frame by the beneficiary. So, life insurance is obviously one of the most efficient vehicles because you're transferring income tax-free dollars. So, I guess that you make an argument, does somebody that has a required minimum distribution of $10,000 a year that doesn't need it, do they buy a life insurance policy that pays out $400,000 to $600,000 income tax free with that $10,000 and let the insurance company handle the risk on how long that person's going to live? That life insurance policy could also have some long-term care benefits to accelerate that death benefit if you passed away early. So, hey, we're starting to check off a couple of boxes of issues with one particular piece and using pennies to buy potential dollars. So that's the efficiency that life insurance can use. You can use life insurance for. And, you may say, I don't need life insurance. I got everything paid off. I've yet to have anybody send the check back, right?
Indeed, Chris. I don't think that is something that we necessarily look at as a financial leverage for our own lifetime. But as far as the financial moves that I make and consider, a lot of them are for the benefit and protection of my family, my wife, my spouse, my child, my loved ones. And that is certainly one that can help move significant benefits in that direction.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And, and I want people listening to this show right now to think, how much life insurance do you want to have on the day you pass away?
As much as possible.
As much as
right?
possible, right? Yep. Because, and here's the mindset of the individual listening to this radio show today is, yeah, but I don't need life insurance. I have to buy life insurance. It costs me money. Okay. I invest my money. And then I get a return on my investment. Okay. All right. Well, last year, your return could have been negative 20%. But life insurance has a guarantee to it based off the type of policy you get and so on and so forth, to throw in some sort of disclaimer on a public radio show.
Right.
I have millions of dollars of life insurance on myself, because I don't want my wife to worry about anything, if something was to happen to me. And it's not because, I don't think she deserves it. She certainly does, and I'm passionate here because I just came back from helping one of my dearest friends who passed away, and his wife is secure at age 60 because he had a term life insurance policy.
So
she can retire today.
Different needs, different situations, different tools to help achieve and accomplish those specific jobs. And then, Chris, as you are making those considerations and determinations, making those recommendations, always considering not only the financial objectives and protections that are offered, but the tax implications as well. And I know we are deep into tax season at this point in time. On an episode of the program a couple weeks back, you actually encouraged people, even those proactive filers that like to jump right on it, maybe to wait just a little bit, because sometimes there are some forms that need to be corrected, or some certain types of accounts that don't send those forms out until maybe mid to late February. So is it time that we start thinking seriously about taxes, or when should we give that serious thought and consideration to our taxes?
Sure. And I'll give you an example. My parents did their tax return, was done and filed in the month of January. Social Security and pension income is basically it. Very simple, straightforward. Okay. We have other people that may have $500,000 in a non-IRA account where we have different types of dividends that have been paid out. We have interest that's been paid out. They may have rental properties, so they have different tax filings because of that. So it can get to be a little bit more complex. And so we always tell folks with non-IRA accounts, try to file your taxes later. Make sure that when a 1099 comes out, you don't get a corrected one. And, you might say, why do I get a corrected one? Okay, well, companies that you own money, that you owe stock in, have paid out dividends or something like that. And they may have said, hey, we're going to, kind of recode the way we did something. We're going to send out a corrected 1099. Okay. It's not Fidelity's fault. It's not TD Ameritrade's fault. It's not Charles Schwab's fault. It's nobody's fault. It's just an accounting principle that they said, oh, you know what? We probably should have done this way. They catch it and send out a corrected one. And, I say that 100 times because, the IRS, if they're going to do audits and whatnot, there's probably some automatic red flags, right? And, 1099s that don't match up are certainly going to be one of them.
Yep. And then, Chris, as we are getting all of those important documents together and reviewing and then filing our taxes for last year, it is a great time to also review all of that information with our financial advisor in the discussions and the considerations of what is the best approach for our investment and retirement strategies moving forward, and what are some of the strategic opportunities that we can identify as a result. Those are the conversations that you are having there at McIntire Retirement Services right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, part of our ongoing promise and our service commitments that we have to clients is, understanding all the different scenarios that they have. People are retiring today with very large 401ks. In many cases, we're looking, into the 7-digit figures now. It used to be unheard of back in the day, but, as they've expanded the amount of money people can contribute into 401ks, and people make good money, got 2 incomes coming in now, so you're looking at a lot more taxable dollars out there than ever before. So taxes are certainly not an if, it's a when, and, trying to help people be prepared when that happens. And for those of you watching on the video, you notice I got a little wound on my elbow when I bring my hand up, and it was a pinch, man, and it does hurt.
Yeah, things happen there. Well, taxes, Chris, again, I think nobody's favorite topic, and certainly nobody's favorite payment to write But it does mean that we made or grew or invested money somewhere. So that is a plus. We just want to be as efficient with the taxes as possible. And if you'd like that forward-looking approach, in fact, if you'd like a comprehensive planning conversation and to design your game plan for retirement, that is no cost, no obligation. All you need to do is pick up the phone and give Chris McIntire a call, ladies and gentlemen. 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. 800-868-1194. Chris, always appreciate the time, the information and perspective that you share here on the program, and hope that elbow heals up quick.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it will. It was I did it on a scaffolding because I had so many clients that fell off of ladders. I bought a scaffolding and I got hurt putting it together. So go figure. Thanks, everybody. Be safe.
Always appreciate the time, Chris. We'll talk to you real soon. And again, ladies and gentlemen, to get that planning conversation started or to review and update your current plan and positions and accounts, pick up the phone, give Chris McIntire a call, 800-868-1194. We'll look forward to hearing from you soon.
Tune into Chris McIntire's full radio program and visit McIntireRetirementServices.com for many additional valuable resources, including other great episodes of Game Plan for Retirement with Chris McIntire. Be sure to subscribe.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor. Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.
Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services. Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.